Why do we love some animals but eat others?
We tend to love our animal companions, our cats and our dogs, and yet so often we eat other animals such as cows, chickens and pigs, even though biologically we know there's no reason to treat the two differently. They're both just as capable of experiencing emotions like pain and fear. They both want to fulfil their important natural interests and to live their lives and to not be killed. And yet we treat these animals so differently. And the reason we do so is because of cognitive dissonance. People, over time, alter their knowledge and their beliefs in order to fit the behaviour patterns they prefer to continue. And those behaviour patterns are the consumption of animal products, whilst at the same time loving their companion animals. So they start to see the so-called food animals as somehow being less sentient, less able to experience pain, stress and fear, which is, of course, entirely untrue from a biological perspective. There isn't any morally or biologically significant basis between the two groups in terms of deciding which to eat and which to bring home and cuddle and love. And yet we treat them so very, very differently, and that's completely illogical. Children naturally care about animals, and we see that in their interactions with animals all the time. It's delightful to watch them. But unfortunately, as they age, they go through a process of enculturation. We actually transmit our culture to them and they learn our ways. And so even though it's upsetting at first, we teach our children to consume animal products. Sometimes we see fathers taking sons out on hunting trips, increasingly little girls as well. And we start to teach them that it's normal and an accepted part of society that animals are used in all sorts of invasive ways. And we deal with this, and our children learn to deal with this by somehow trying to persuade themselves that the animals aren't really hurt by these activities, that their interests aren't really important, things that we know are biologically untrue.
How can we ignore animals' suffering when consuming them?
So cognitive dissonance is the phenomenon whereby people's behaviour differs from their beliefs and attitudes. So for example, people may know that smoking is harmful, but they still continue to smoke. Now, people very often enjoy eating meat and consuming animal products, but they know that animals suffer when they're confined in restricted spaces in very large numbers, not able to exercise highly motivated natural behaviours, subjected to painful husbandry procedures, often without adequate painkillers such as castration, branding and so on. And that they're probably afraid when they go to the slaughterhouse and that they do not want to die. So how people respond to this dissonance between their behaviour that contributes to all of these things and their knowledge that these sorts of things go on is, over time, they start to alter their beliefs and they actually start to see animals as being less sentient, or the feelings that animals have are seen as being less important. So what this does is it resolves the dissonance that people have and allows them to carry on with their behavioural patterns of eating meat, drinking milk and consuming eggs without that discord going on in their minds. Animals experience a variety of stresses associated with transportation. When they arrive at the slaughterhouses, they may be crowded with unfamiliar animals into unfamiliar pens, sometimes without any food because they're not usually given food prior to being slaughtered. They experience disturbing sounds, sights, smells. Sometimes they will smell blood from other animals. So we think that the animals do experience that degree of fear, which may vary from severe to minor, depending on the case. But there's no doubt that animals are stressed by going through these sorts of experiences.
What did your research on animal intelligence find?
So with Dr. Judith Ben-Swarsberg from the Messerly Institute, who was a colleague of mine, we recently reviewed in detail characteristics of animals such as intelligence, cognitive capacities, ability to anticipate the mental states of other animals, the social relationships and complex behaviours that they have, animal communicative abilities. Now, this is important because it's the existence of abilities like these within humans that's always been used to justify treating humans as a special case with a special moral status far above the other animals. But what we found when we looked across the animal kingdom was we found that other animal species very commonly do have characteristics like these, at least to some degree. It seems virtually impossible to identify any particular characteristic of humans which might reasonably be put forth as a reason to give humans a special moral status, which does not exist somewhere in the animal kingdom. And conversely, there are some humans that lack these characteristics as well. Accordingly, there doesn't seem to be the great difference between humans and other animals that has always been proposed as a reason to treat humans so very differently from the other animals. What this does is it reveals that argument to be an argument of convenience, which has been used to justify a very different treatment of the other animals, which is lacking in any good evidence. Actually, when we look at the other animals, we find plenty of reasons why we ought to be considering them morally.
Is the suffering of animals as significant to them as our suffering is to us?
I mean, absolutely. There's no doubt now that a wide variety of animals have the capacity to experience pain, suffering in many different forms, whether that be emotions such as grief, sadness at the loss of a social partner, fear, stress, and so on. And what we now also know from more recent evidence is that animals also have the ability to experience a wide variety of positive states as well, joy, happiness, enjoying positive social interactions of all kinds. Accordingly, it seems that there is no significant difference between humans and other animals with respect to their capacity to experience emotions like pain and positive emotions as well.
Morally speaking, how similar are animals to humans?
In every way that matters morally, it seems that the other animals don't have significant differences with human beings. At least those animals that are sentient and have the capacity to experience states such as pain, stress, suffering and fear, and also positive emotions too, such as joy, happiness, social relations with other animals. There doesn't seem to be any good basis for treating humans as markedly different from other animals when it comes to moral consideration.
What are your views on so-called humane slaughter or killing?
Some forms of slaughter can be conducted more humanely than others. If we are thinking of euthanasia, it is possible to euthanize animals in a relatively stress-free manner. Unfortunately, however, we know from repeated undercover footage obtained from slaughterhouses in the United Kingdom and other countries that even in developed countries, it's not uncommon to see animals in the slaughterhouse suffering abuses of various forms, being literally punched, kicked, picked up by fleeces and thrown into stunning boxes, and so on. And if you consider it, slaughterhouse workers are quite often poorly paid, not trained very well. Many of them will be immigrant workers, not able to get other jobs, who don't necessarily speak English too well. The work is very physical, it's quite exhausting, and it's mind-numbingly tedious and boring. And you can understand why these workers would sometimes seek to take their frustrations at their work out on their animals, unacceptable though this is. Particularly when those animals balk at unfamiliar sounds, sights and smells, and slow down the operation, frustrating the workers and making their day even longer. Now that's what goes on, including violations of animal welfare law, in developed countries. There are unintentional problems that occur as well when things like electrical stunning equipment fails. There are voltage problems when the captive bolt pistols build up ash around the working parts, which then impedes the ability to fire cleanly. These can result in misstuns in the slaughtered animals, prolonging their suffering because unfortunately they can still be conscious as they're then shackled up and have their throats cut. Now, all of this occurs in the developed world. There are 70 billion animals currently, land animals that are killed worldwide each year for human consumption. Many of these are killed in the developing world when, of course, there may not be electrical stunning equipment, captive bolt stunners and other modern facilities, and where people are even less likely to have adequate training. So actually, a lot of the slaughtering that goes on in slaughterhouses is very stressful for the animals and is quite inhumane.
Is the treatment of farm animals similar to slavery?
Without wishing in any way to diminish the severity of the harms that have been inflicted upon people throughout history who have been born into bondage and forced to do productive work for other people as slaves, You can indeed note that both of those are true of many of the 70 billion animals that are currently farmed on Earth. There is one important difference, though, I think, which is that the animals that we farm to consume are nearly all killed as soon as they reach a marketable body weight. So they're killed at a very premature stage of life. So this prevents them from fulfilling all of the interests that might be important to them and experiencing any positive future welfare states or emotional states. Accordingly, the moral crime that is inflicted on these animals is greater. But apart from that, yes, there are important parallels between the two.
How ethical is our treatment of farm animals?
So there are a range of welfare problems that are experienced by intensively farmed livestock, as most of them are these days. Very large numbers of animals are confined within fairly small spaces where they're not able to fulfill highly motivated natural behaviours such as nest building, stretching their wings in the cases of laying hens, social behaviours and so on. They often never get to feel fresh air. They may not get to go outside and to feel the sun upon their backs, to engage in natural behaviour patterns. And these animals are still highly motivated to engage in these patterns, and this causes stress and suffering, being unable to fulfil these behavioural patterns. We subject livestock to a whole array of husbandry procedures such as castration, hot iron branding, dehorning, tail docking, quite commonly without painkillers, unfortunately, because it's a little bit more expensive to use those painkillers. This adds to the pain and the stress that these animals experience. And then, of course, we kill these animals at a very premature stage of life, preventing them from fulfilling any of the interests that they might have in pursuing their lives. So the way in which we treat the other animals is profoundly in violation of their welfare and is also clearly immoral.